The other day, I got one of the toughest and most emotional questions I've gotten in a while. Pastor Mike, do babies who die in the womb go to heaven? My wife Kim and I have 2 daughters, and by God's mercy, we never experienced a miscarriage, at least not that I'm aware of. And so I can kind of talk about this in general, and I'm going to grab my Bible and speak to you in just a second. But first, I just want to feel the weight of this question. If you've had a miscarriage, if for some reason you were so excited to bring a child into the world, and then the heartbreaking thing happened, if you felt those little kicks or just were so excited after those first few weeks, and then, oh man, the tragic thing occurred, and you just have your heart set on like, I can't wait to see that little peanut when I see the face of Jesus. I can only imagine the emotion that you bring into this question. Do all babies who die in the womb go to heaven? Well, I'm a guy who loves the Bible and who clings to it as the truth. I believe the Bible says in multiple spots we should not add to its teaching and we should not subtract from it. So when I answer this really deep personal question for so many of you, I want to make sure that I have a biblical basis and not just saying, what feels right to me or maybe what you want to hear. So what can we say about little children like that? To be honest, there's no passage that directly answers that question. I could search every verse that uses the word baby or womb, and there's no direct biblical answer from God that all babies or some babies are there's no passages like that in the Word. Here's general principles that we do know. We do know that when conception happens, life happens. Psalm 139 is that famous example. God, you knit me together in my mother's womb. So we believe that there was a child there, a little body with a little soul. We believe that soul matters to God. In fact, Psalm 51 says, I was sinful from birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Right? Generic tissue cannot be sinful, but a little human being with a soul can. And that's why we're asking these questions, like what exactly happens to that soul? Where's the second thing we know? We know that the way that God saves souls is through the means that he has provided to connect us to Jesus. What am I saying? I'm saying that the way a person who is sinful gets saved is through the gospel. I think of James chapter 1, humbly accept the word planted in you which can save you. Or I think of the amazing gift of baptism in 1 Peter chapter 3. It says baptism now saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. God has given us these amazing means of grace, these tools, these ways to connect sinful people to his son Jesus so that they might be saved. But this is the tough question. If my child was born, as my kid grew up, we could talk about the gospel. How do I connect my kid as fast as possible, as much as possible to the gospel? But before that child is born, what do? I can only do so much. And so this is the tricky part, right? The solution that God has given us to a child's problem, we just can't give the solution. And that's why, as a Bible guy, I've come to this conclusion. While the Bible does not exactly say what happens to babies who die in the womb, what we can say is that they are in the hands of God. Right? They never came into our hands to do what God has called us to do. Therefore, they are just in the hands of God. And here's what I know about the hands of God. They're good hands. They're hands that you can trust. They're hands that never once in all eternity have ever made a mistake. I can't quote a verse to tell you what happened to your son or to your daughter who didn't make it out of the womb alive. But I can say this, they're in the hands of a merciful Father, a God of amazing grace, a God who is just and right and will never do what's wrong. So put your hope and find your peace in that. Your precious little one is in the hands of a perfect Father in heaven. He's a Father that you can always, always, always trust.